Thank you, Cathaoirleach. The Labour Party will be supporting this motion tonight. It's a good motion, and I congratulate my colleagues across for putting it forward. It's something that's very badly needed, and I think will have main support in this House. We need this motion. We need to do something about the insurance industry. It's as simple as that. I've seen this before in relation to other areas as well, and certainly it's an industry that needs the scrutiny of this House, and so I welcome this debate. Because the importance of affordability in transport for commuters, motorists and small businesses across this country is critical. And what we're seeing in relation to the increases of 60% since 2014 and 34% over the last 12 months is nothing short of scandalous. And I mean that sincerely, because it's having real effects on people's lives to a degree that's alarming. Recently on my local radio station in Tip FM, this topic was spoken about, and it was said afterwards that very few items that have been debated or discussed on a show like that on a rural station got as much attention and reference. That's how much this is heated up, and particularly, may I say it, in rural Ireland, obviously where public transport isn't available to the same level and where people are very much car dependent. And that's across this country. So, I mean, this government has said that rural Ireland is a priority. Not necessarily in Ranelagh now, but rural Ireland is a priority. So if it is, well then tackle this, because it is a central issue when it comes to rural Ireland. And, you know, I've been frightened by, I'm not going to repeat some of the comments being made earlier by previous speakers, but I've been frightened by some of the examples that I've seen. I previously had responsibility in an earlier life for regulating the taxi industry. And you know, we're talking again about rural Ireland. You'll see the diminution of actual hackneys in rural Ireland, which are very much a necessity to get around, to keep the vibrancy of localities, because the insurance premiums are going up so much that they simply can't stay on the road. So, you know, it's really a critical issue. You know, I've heard numerous cases in relation to small businesses that have got quotes for their vehicles, which are just absolutely incredible. Just when they're trying to move on and get out of the slump, which they have, they're being hit by this. So it really is a critical issue. So I really want the government to act, and act with the support of this Dáil, because the short-sightedness of the insurance industries is basically going to lead to a number of people who are going to drive on the roads without insurance, whether we like it or not, and we don't want that. I have to be honest, I have a real problem with the insurance industry. I've past experience here when it came to the issue of managing flooding in the last couple of years. I found the way in which the industry dealt with that issue not to be sincere. I think the way in which they're dealing with this issue isn't really sincere either, to be honest. I think there is a lack of transparency in relation to data management, and this comes up across the board when it comes to the insurance industry, and the way in which they map data and the way in which they use data to justify whatever means they want, whatever end decision they want to come up with in relation to a particular category of people, whether that is elderly, whether it is people returning in to Ireland from out of Ireland when they were in Europe or across the world in America or wherever like that, particularly in relation to young people. I think young people have been really adversely affected. So I believe that the industry are peddling yarns. I mean, there's no doubt there's been issues in the industry in relation to Quinn, in relation to Setanta, in relation to reserves, in relation to undervaluing. However, there are peddling yarns when it comes to the justification of the increases on the spiralling cost of claims and the corresponding legal fees, because barristers' fees have actually fallen when it comes to these issues, so legal costs have changed. Also, the court services, as well as the injury board, does not support the statements by the industry that increasing personal injury claims are a major factor in the cost to consumers. In fact, the increases in the size of awards presented by the Injuries Board are modest at best, in very small single figures. So there seems to be quite a gulf between the explanation of what the industry are saying and what is actually true. So we need to get to the bottom of it. In addition, insurers should be obliged to provide information to customers surrounding changes to the charges that they are being given, and they should be justified. So we need transparency in relation to the increases. We need transparency in relation to the premiums. We made changes in this country in relation to transparency across a whole range of other areas, for instance in the sale of houses. So why can't we anonymously make changes here where all the increases in premiums and all the premiums are displayed as to justification as regards what the insurance companies are doing? I think if we did that, we'd get back to the point I've just made earlier, which is in relation to how I believe data is being massaged to justify what the industry want and to justify changing the way in which they want to treat risk in particular. We know that insurance fraud is a very real issue, which plays no small part in explaining some of the rise in premiums. False, exaggerated and invidious claims by a small section of society is costing all law-abiding citizens additional costs in relation to their premiums. And of course, there's that famous case which has been publicised in the last few weeks in relation to a number of individuals. I won't get into its specifics, Chair, whereby it was quite obvious from what the judge outlined that this was one of a number of cases whereby individuals are simply fraudulently looking to make claims. In situations like that, it's quite clear that such people need to be penalised severely. And not alone that, but obviously the Gardaí need to be getting involved very quickly. And there needs to be Gardaí follow-up. Insurance companies, so, can't be allowed to act as unregulated bandits. We have to ensure that the way in which they perform their function in the future is transparent, that it works within a code, that the task force that is set up will have real teeth, and the manner in which it does its work will be quick. That we can isolate out and target the people who have particularly been targeted, small businesses, younger people, older people, people returning, also people who have older cars who have had their NCTs passed and still being charged absolutely exorbitant premiums, even though their car is justified as being roadworthy for a year or 2 years, whichever the case may be. So the Labour Party will be absolutely supporting this motion, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how the government is going to ensure that there is action taken to support people, and particularly people across this country in rural areas. Before I conclude, Count Corla, or last Count Corla, I want to raise another issue, which is an issue that hasn't been raised, and it's an issue I have a real concern about. And that is how end-of-life vehicles are being treated. Because there's an issue here for the insurance industry. And I believe there's a serious issue here in relation to road safety. And I believe there's a serious issue here in relation to the insurance industry not wanting to take responsibility. Because it's my belief that because of the way in which the legislation is set in this country, the end-of-life vehicles, some end-of-life vehicles, are simply ending up back on the road. In fact, I know they are. I've spoken to some breakers who have told me about this, and are being driven around by families, by young people, by others, because the legislation in relation to how we treat end-of-life vehicles isn't robust enough. I won't get into the detail of the categories, but we have 4 categories in relation to end-of-life vehicles. But in many cases, it is not mandatory for insurance companies to actually ensure that end-of-life vehicles are actually scrapped. There's no certification that's mandatory. It's voluntary, not like the UK. And in some cases, those insurance companies are not following up. And hence, some people are ensuring that those cars are actually being sold on again. If they've been imported, it's actually easier to do it than if they haven't. But they're still being sold on one way or the other. That's causing increase in premiums. It's the insurance industry are not taking responsibility for what they should. In many cases, the owners of the cars originally are still being left with the vehicles in their name, and when they have an accident, then they are being held responsible, which is completely unacceptable, seeing as the insurance company has already written them off. And there's a gap in the legislation here. And I have spoken to the officials in the Department of Transport in relation to this. But yet nothing has happened months later. So I'm asking this government, through yourself, Minister, to ensure that this issue is dealt with, because it's having a huge impact in relation, it will have a huge impact in relation to road safety. It is having an impact in relation to the insurance industry, and it is having an impact in relation to premiums. The insurance industry has to be responsible for certifying that all vehicles that are written off actually end up written off. It is not down to the individuals. Once the insurance company assesses it and takes responsibility, they should be the owners of the pathway for the destruction of that vehicle. There are people, I'm concluding, there are people who are driving around on the roads of Ireland tonight in cars that should be scrapped and haven't been because of a gap in the legislation.
Thank you.
you.
And can I ask you to propose the